This is Batshit Crazy, a podcast dedicated to all things strange and unusual, with your spirit guides Heather and Dylan, who will take you to the other side. Subject matter featured on Batshit Crazy may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion
it's in
is
a
advised.
book, a reading rainbow.
Hi, you're listening to Batshit Crazy. I'm Heather, and that was Dylan.
Oh no, you wasn't recording that.
You wasn't recording that.
So yeah, that song's on TikTok right now as a little trend, and I can't get it out of my head.
I loved reading Rainbow when I was a
It
kid.
takes me back to simpler times as a child when I had no worries, and I was just trying to rip through this episode of Reading Rainbow.
You
with
also didn't have any cable, so PBS was where it was at, right?
Lamar Burton, son,
It's true.
doing a damn
I think
thing.
his name is LeVar.
It's a LeVar. It is.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. All right, so here we are on another great episode of Batshit Crazy. Welcome. I'm Dylan,
I said I was Heather.
and she's Heather.
He's got his little cold brew coffee over there. It's got him all amped.
I got to tell you, my entire morning changed post cold brew coffee. It's jumping. You hear that?
Yeah.
Ice is perfect. The flavors are just the flavors. I don't know. They do something in my
There's
mouth.
a marriage of flavor in your mouth.
Yes, it's a menagerie.
A menagerie. A menagerie of flavors.
Oh,
Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess at least it's not a glass menagerie.
she's let me drink during the podcast. This is incredible.
I never let you do that.
I want some crunchy cracker snacks right now.
Some crunchy crackers. Oh, my gosh.
All right, so here we are. How are you doing, Heather?
Hi. I'm well, Dylan.
You're well?
I'm doing well.
You're doing good?
I'm well.
Okay. All
Very
right.
well.
I'm doing well, too. And I must say something about the Apple Corporation and their products, though.
Well, have at it.
This is a second recording of this episode, and it was not our fault this time, right? We ripped through this last night, had a pretty good episode. It felt great. Great story. We're going to bring it to you right here in a minute. And it's like, boom, Heather does her thing. She gets it all together, puts the intro on it, uploads it. Everything looks great. And then one of our wonderful listeners alerted us today, thank you, Allison, that only half the episode is in the file. So Heather's like, okay, I'll fix that. This has happened before, kind of. She goes back and looks. The $1,500 MacBook Pro, the file's just gone. It's just gone.
Even though it's been saved.
Even though it's been saved and edited and put together.
Try to open it, and it will not open for some reason. Oh, well.
Oh, well, so we are back to deliver the content, and I'm feeling it.
Batshit crazy, baby. You're
That's
going
right.
batshit crazy today. Well, Dylan, just off the coast of North Carolina, known as the Outer Banks, lies the graveyard of the Atlantic. Now, you might be asking why it has such an ominous name.
That sounds scary.
It earned this haunting moniker because more than 2,000 maritime disasters have left the remains of more than 600 ships on the ocean floor.
I'm no expert about worldwide shipwrecks, but I'm assuming that's a lot.
It holds the highest density of sunken ships in the world.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
I reckon you could say it's a lot.
That is pretty amazing if you consider all the different, kind
That's
of
a fuck ton of shipwrecks.
bad spots in the sea, worldwide, dangerous conditions. So apparently this is some of the most dangerous conditions in the ocean.
One of the reasons why this area is so dangerous is because two currents meet just offshore at Cape Hatteras. The cold southbound waters from the Arctic Labrador Current collide with northbound warm waters from the Gulf Stream, which results in what some might call a violent clash in the ocean.
Well, yeah, just from a logical standpoint, there's no way that those two streams, one being warm, one being cold, are moving in opposite different directions. I'm sure colliding, that's going to, at the very least, cause turbulent waters.
The currents do slow down just enough to leave deposits of silt, sand, and shells in an area known as Diamond Shoals, which is about 14 miles out to sea. On the morning of January 31st, 1921, a lookout at the Cape Hatteras Coast Guard Station saw a 5-masted schooner appearing as if stranded on the Diamond Shoals, with all the sails set as if intentionally run aground. Immediately, 2 rescue boats were dispatched to help, but were caught in freezing swells that were running high. they were not able to make contact. However, through binoculars, they could make out the name of the vessel, the Carroll A. Deering.
So it sounds like a ship in distress in this area is not an uncommon occurrence, right? So they're ready. They know what to do. They have not only lighthouses and stuff, but they have actual lookout observation towers, it sounds like. And so, yeah, they go into action. They're like, there's a ship. They need help. Let's get to them. But they can't make it because of the choppy seas.
There seemed to be no crew on board, and they couldn't make out any lifeboats, which the rescuers initially thought was a good sign. The rescuers imagined maybe those on board had tried to make it to shore already with success. But it took 4 days for the seas to calm down enough to attempt another rescue. What the rescuers found once they made it to the Carroll A. Deering was unsettling. Aboard the Carroll A. Deering were scattered nautical charts, but the chronometer and sextant were missing, and parts of the logbook.
And so those are tools used to navigate, correct?
A meal had been set out in the crew galley, but clearly had not been touched, suggesting something may have happened in the moments before they were to dine. There was no sign of a struggle, at least nothing to indicate violence, no blood or carnage left behind. The ship's anchors were missing, the steering cables were intentionally cut, and the binnacle compass had been smashed with a hammer.
So if you're on this rescue party or this, the people trying to help, and you're going around this ship, how do you think this would weird you out?
Definitely.
All this stuff, I think one of the strangest elements to what you're describing there is the dinner laid out untouched, because, eating was a big deal to people who are working hard and on the ocean. You're not going to miss a hot meal. You know what I mean? And so it has to be something very significant to happen for you not to touch your food at all. And then all the rest of the stuff, the ship's been completely disabled and it's basically dead in the water.
Yeah, this would render a ship unsteerable. If crew had decided to mutiny, they would have wanted to leave the ship in a functional capacity. There were 3 pairs of boots found in the captain's cabin, as if perhaps someone else had slept there. Like, not just the captain. The spare bed had been slept in, also. The only surviving creature aboard the ship was a tabby cat.
Huh. Now, and did they debrief the kitty?
They gathered the cat and a few other pieces of evidence, then returned to shore. They sent out word to other stations to keep an eye out for crew members or lifeboats. Every part of the beach, bay, and inlet was searched for signs of the crew. Yet weeks passed with no sign of crew members or explanation about what had happened aboard the Deering. After 3 weeks, the ship began falling apart due to the force of the waves, and it was becoming a hazard for other ships trying to navigate the shoals. A decision was made to dynamite the ship into little pieces in order for it to wash away. Because it was really about the only way they had to remove the ship.
I say you just leave it as a marker of a bad spot you don't want to run aground. But I know it doesn't really work like that, because the ship's going to continue to shift and eventually can end out in the, where in the channel where they're trying to go. Well, I don't think channel is the right word, but so they're just going to blow it up, let the ocean do its thing, and kind of wash the ship away, essentially.
Let's talk a little bit about the Carroll A. Deering, Dylan. Built in 1919, the Deering, was the last wooden schooner created before iron took over the shipbuilding industry. It was built by the G.G. Deering Company in Bath, Maine. The ship was named after the son's owner. The owner's son. Son's owner, the owner's son. You get the idea. And it came in weighing at 1,879 tons.
Which is a lot.
It was considered luxurious for a cargo ship because it was outfitted with mahogany and oak. It had a usable lavatory and steam heat and also electricity.
Wow. So this is as far as cargo ships goes, this is a nice one.
This is fancy.
It's got the exotic woods.
Yes. So by all accounts, it was a reliable ship, having made successful voyages previously. The investigation continued. The Coast Guard soon learned that the Deering had been hauling coal from Newport News, Virginia to Brazil. The captain, William H. Merritt, fell ill, so when they had arrived at a port in Delaware, he was replaced by Captain W.B. Wormel. The trip to Brazil went off without a hitch, and they stopped in Barbados to load more cargo. But for some reason, they were unable to load this particular cargo. So they planned to return back to Newport News empty. Now, this wasn't good news because it meant that the return portion of the trip was unpaid because they weren't carrying anything.
So the entire crew is going to only make half the money for this trip than they should have.
Yes.
Okay, and not to say that would aggravate people.
While in port, the first mate, Charles McClellan, got very drunk and was arrested the night before they were to be underway and head back to Virginia. The captain confessed to a friend that he expected trouble and didn't think much of his crew. Now, it is said that Wormel and McClellan didn't get along from the start. Being in close quarters on the ship didn't help. Wormel considered his first mate an alcoholic, just a drunk, and didn't appreciate the way in which McClellan treated other crew members.
So, yeah, this isn't a good situation when the captain and his first mate really don't get along together, right?
No, not at all.
That's a big deal.
Right. I mean, you have to consider the first mate almost like middle management.
Right.
He's going to be supervising the lower level crew members.
So typically him and the captain discuss
kind of work closely together,
where they're going to go, the route they might take, or the expectations of the crew during the voyage, and he would in turn communicate that down the chain of command to the rest of the crew, right?
Yes.
So they work closely together, and it would be a lot better if they got along.
In an ideal world, yes, Dylan. So a friend of the captain, the one in which the captain had said, I don't really like this guy, reported that just before they had arrived in Barbados, McClellan had threatened the captain by saying, quote, "I'll kill you before it's over, old man."
Oh, I wonder what he meant by that.
And while he had been drinking at the Continental Cafe, which was like a popular spot in Barbados, McClellan was overheard saying that he would kill the captain before they made it to Norfolk, Virginia.
Well, and I have to imagine that that's a bold statement in front of other sailors, seafaring people, because what you're talking about is basically mutiny or not respecting your captain's authority.
Traitorous.
Yeah, yes, very.
The handwritten log entries were made by the captain until January 23rd of 1921. After that, an unknown hand had replaced it. In the following week, it made its way up the North Carolina coast. On January 29th, the ship was seen off the coast of Cape Fear. Then, 6 days later, she was spotted at Cape Lookout by Captain Jacobson, which is about 70 miles north of Cape Fear. This trip should have only taken a day, but it took 6 days.
Yeah, and the ship's going to be observed by someone, either other ships, people in the lookouts, people in the lighthouses. So there's no way it came up through there and was not seen for 5 days or 4 days, right?
Right. And as the ship passed Cape Lookout, a crew member, described as a redhead with a Scandinavian accent, used a megaphone to inform the lightship crew that the Deering had lost its anchors at sea during a storm. Only after she sailed on did the lightship workers realize there had been no major storm activity on the coast for weeks. They also noted the crew seemed to be hanging out on the poop deck, which was normally off limits to common sailors. It seemed suspicious. The next time anyone would see the ship again, she was crewless and run aground. All 8 members of the crew, along with the first mate and captain, were missing. The mystery of what happened to the Deering while at sea remains unknown.
Well, it seems like if someone was going to relay this information, hey, we've lost our anchors, which is a very dangerous situation for a ship. If you're caught in any kind of bad weather or high seas, I guess you like to anchor up and kind of stay where you are until it passes, I'm assuming. And so, and they didn't reach out for help. Like, look, we've lost anchors. Is there any way you guys can kind of maybe tow us in, or is there somewhere safe we can tie off and try to repair this? But to, relay that information and then just continue on about your business seems kind of strange to me.
Well, I would say during a storm, you likely would not want to drop anchor.
Oh, okay. See, I don't know.
You wouldn't want to drop anchors during a storm, but I think for this particular crew member to relay that to the lightship crew is perhaps their way of saying, like, we can't stop. Like, can't talk, got to keep going, don't have any anchors.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. It's almost like you've been on boats before.
Almost. Although theories have surfaced over the years, we don't know what exactly happened, Dylan, but let's get into some of the theories. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
The first theory suggested that Barbadian rum runners hijacked the ship, used it for a run, and then abandoned it. But there are questions that don't really add up with this theory. First of all, this type of schooner was not at all a ship they would have wanted to use for rum running.
Right. It's a kind of a big, bulky cargo ship.
They would have wanted a smaller, sleeker, faster ship for rum running. You want to make the delivery, get in, get out as quick as possible.
They would want a sexier boat.
A sexier boat for the rum runs.
Okay.
Exactly, right? And if they had, for whatever reason, hijacked this ship, then how did those rum runners...
Say that 3 times fast.
How did they get off the ship? And then
Right.
what happened to the crew?
And then how did it end up all the way there off the North Carolina coast? Because I would assume, and again, I've already been quite wrong about ships. Anchoring in the storm is the wrong thing to do. Is it if they were to use it anywhere near Barbados and make their run, which I'm not sure if they're running from there to Cuba or whatever is going on with the rum.
Well, I'd imagine the rum was probably being ran to Florida or the Gulf, like around the Gulf Coast,
Okay.
Florida. I mean, it is my understanding that during the times of Prohibition, the rum runners came in around Florida.
So basically, they could have used it to come to the American coast at some point in the South, right?
Yes.
And then abandon the ship and it drift up and run aground. That's feasible, do you think?
It is feasible, but it's also kind of strange because if they were going to abandon the ship, it could have easily just navigated way off course out to sea.
And also, why do you, if you're using this ship for illicit activities, you're trying to move fast. So why do you take the time to cut all the steering, disable everything, smash stuff, all these things that were done to this ship? It seems like you would just be in and out, moving fast. So that seems a little odd as well.
Some speculated the crew might have mutinied. Others thought maybe they all drowned trying to swim to shore. But this doesn't explain the severed cables and the missing anchors. And the ship hadn't begun sinking yet. So let's just say they found themselves in distress. It would have been easy for these sailors to remain on board until help arrived.
Yeah, because the ship was intact for some days before it started breaking up in the force of the water,
Yeah,
right?
it was like 3 weeks later.
Okay, so they could have easily stayed there, even waited out the bad waters and bad weather or whatever until help could reach them, and they would have been fine.
Some suggest her crew fell victim to the mysterious Bermuda Triangle. But again, this doesn't explain the red-headed Scandinavian seen on deck using a megaphone, the other seamen milling around
Oh my God.
on this upper deck.
They were taken by Vikings in longboats.
You think so?
Maybe. It was the mer people.
Now, everyone from the Coast Guard to the FBI have tried to figure out the fate of the Carroll A. Deering. To this day, the Carroll A. Deering is one of the most discussed and written about maritime mysteries of the 20th century.
Wow.
So we still don't know what happened.
And people have tried to figure it out. They have quite a bit of resources, right?
Yes. Now, I have a theory. I haven't really, I guess, researched too much about my theory.
It's just in your head.
But here you go.
Okay. Lay it on us.
Okay. Since this was like the last of the wooden schooners, right? And it had made a few runs, imagine if there was insurance on this ship.
Okay.
That you vandalize the ship, you have it blown up, and then you get a huge insurance payout.
Oh. So, okay, so you've made this last of the wooden ships, basically, and all of a sudden there's this new technology right there in your face, iron, metal ships. So you might think, hey, this ship's not going to have a full life cycle. We're not going to get the use out of it that we thought because now it's antiquated technologies. So we should just basically, it's no different than taking your car in the middle of nowhere, setting it on fire, and then claiming someone stole it and getting an insurance payout because you're upside down in your car because you got a poor deal in the first place.
Right. And this ship was luxurious, made of mahogany and oak, so it was likely worth more than a standard wooden ship.
Ah.
Think about that.
Okay.
And now I'm not saying that this happened. This is just the thoughts swirling around in my old brain, right? You take that insurance money and you pay off the crew members, which some of them perhaps unmarried. They're sailors. They're out to sea, right? So they just go off and resume new identities.
Well, it's not that hard, I wouldn't think, for
or assume a new identity, I should say.
A sailor to pull up at any port and find work on another ship. And now he's got a pocket full of money. He can, carry on with his life of drinking in taverns and visiting women of ill repute in every port of call.
Are you talking about like pirate winches?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But no sign of the crew ever showed up again. No one ever assumed their identities. I mean, they just, for all we know, fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, and that's a good theory you have that no one touched on in your research materials. I think that's a good theory. But for all we know, it could have been worth more if it was decommissioned, pieced out, deconstructed, maybe the valuable woods used in other interiors of other ships or things like that. So we don't know, but I think that's a great theory you have, a great possibility. But and it's just one of those mysteries that will never be solved unless someone's journal or something turns up at some point. But it's been long enough. You think that information would have come out.
What is very interesting, the ship, once it was broken up, started, of course, the wood floated to the beach. Locals picked it up and used it to build homes.
Oh, well, yeah, lumber's lumber. And it's not that easy back then to get it into, usable materials, the board lengths and stuff. So if there's boards washing up onto shore, I would expect people to use them.
Yeah, no searches along the eastern seaboard ever turned up any bodies, boats, any kind of conclusive evidence. I mean, you'd think eventually a shoe might wash up, a lifeboat,
yeah, well,
a body.
Oftentimes, I've even heard some modern stories of late about people disappeared, in the ocean right offshore or even miles offshore. And they say that it tends to wash back to the land and you tend to get some evidence of some type wash up somewhere. So the fact there was never any debris, lifeboat, shoes, a body of any sort is kind of strange.
If you ever want to see what remains of the Carroll A. Deering, the graveyard of the Atlantic Museum exhibits artifacts, including the ship's bell, a flask, and a steam-powered windlass or winch.
Ooh.
But, of course, still missing is an explanation.
Yeah, there's no explanation.
What are your theories, Dylan?
Well, you had the first mate talking crazy, right? Drunk and out of control. Some known animosities between him and his captain, which is not good. And so, which is very... See, if a crew mutinies, it's because they don't trust their captain anymore, basically. He's either underpaying them, which is a quick way to get in trouble with people, or leading them in the dangerous situations they don't agree with, or going somewhere they don't agree with and they want to go somewhere else. So a mutinied crew would subdue the captain quickly, maybe by surprise. Therefore, you have no signs of struggle, right? They just surprise him, get him, tie him up. They have full control of him. But then you're going to take the ship and use the ship to go somewhere you'd rather go, or, do something you'd rather do. So being completely disabled, the ship is kind of strange. Now, they could have only disabled it at the last minute when they were near enough to coast to get in lifeboats and maybe make shore somewhere. And they could, then take the lifeboat and destroy it or burn it, and then no one would ever know. So I think that's a possibility. A full-on mutiny at some point, and then the crew just abandons ship when they're close enough and they can see land, and then they disable the ship, kind of maybe even almost like staging a scene of some strange happenings on the ship, and then abandoning ship.
Well, now here seems to be maybe one of the most plausible theories, Dylan, is later the U.S. Weather Bureau said there were actually a series of hurricanes in the Atlantic, but it seemed to be pretty far off the coast. But it may have caused the Deering and other ships at the time to wreck or disappear. But if you remember, this ghost ship was lodged on the shoals in good shape. And again, those steering cables were cut. I mean, it's just very strange. But there was a steamship in the area, the Hewitt, that could have taken the crew aboard to try to save them from the storm. And the Hewitt later sank with all its crew and possibly took down the Deering survivors with it. So that does seem to be the more plausible theory.
Like directly after this event?
Yeah, not too far off after this
okay.
happened.
So they possibly could have had the crew on board and their story never got out because they ended up in distress as well.
Could have possibly happened. Now, Captain Mormel's widow said, along with some shipping officials, she told this to the Bath, North Carolina Daily Times in Bath, North Carolina in June of 1921, that she, along with these shipping officials, believe pirates raided the ship and killed the crew.
Well, see, you still had active pirates. I mean, we have pirates to this day that, try to board vessels and take whatever valuables they can. So, yeah, I mean, and these were pirate waters.
Well,
right?
There
From Barbados.
There was a quote released that said, romantic and impossible as pirate theories appear to be in these modern days, the investigation conducted by the Allied departments seems to substantiate the belief that a torpedo boat chaser purchased from some foreign government has been outfitted as a pirate craft and is preying upon vessels in the South Atlantic. Now, some papers that were found at a Russian communist office in New York called for members to seize U.S. ships, and the Deering could have been one of the targets, according to reports of the day. 3 other ships disappeared around the same time, raising speculation that it was the work of pirates or Russians.
Oh my God, the fucking Russians again. Man, the Russians do everything. According to some people.
Well, I mean, this was the era of World War I.
Right.
So it's a possibility.
Well, even if not directed by the Russians, you did have people living the pirate life still. And this ship came through Barbados, which was the heart of the pirate culture, really.
Yo-ho-ho.
Right? Is that right?
Well, I believe so. I mean, Barbados was a stop off for pirates. It was a big port of call. It was also a big port for slave trade.
A place where they pirated literally their fenced goods.
Yes.
You had merchants who would buy the illegal goods and then sell them on the real legal market. So, yeah, I think that is a possible, strong possibility as well. Yeah.
We will likely never know what actually happened aboard the Carroll A. Deering. But the mystery continues to baffle those of us who learn of her story, Dylan.
Well, yeah, it's strange, because for everything you say that it could be, I can think of a reason why that might not be true. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very interesting, and I can see why the mystery of this ship has endured over the years, and to this day, I'm sure ship enthusiasts, the people that study this time and era,
maritime historians.
Yeah, those people, they all know about this. I'm sure, very famous story.
Yeah, it is a very famous story, but I assume there were a few listeners out there maybe who were not familiar with the story of the Carroll A. Deering and wanted to bring it to light because, again, it is a very strange and peculiar tale. And maybe it's because I have a background, just being a dirty seaman.
Wow.
The ghost ships,
I'm just going to leave that.
something very haunting about ghost ships.
Yeah, well, I think I've told you this before. I think the sea itself is spooky. You know what I mean? Short of like a sunny day on a beach having fun with kids running around, that's cool. But as far as being out on the ocean and like bad weather or fog setting in or just gloomy days and
Yes.
on the choppy ocean.
One of the eeriest experiences I've ever had in my entire life is being out in the Pacific Ocean, or the Pacific Ocean, as some people like to call it.
The Pacific Ocean.
Being out in the Pacific Ocean, early morning, I was a photographer in the Navy, so I would take photos of, I would document all sorts of things. But I would document the refueling. So I'm up on the deck, the flight deck. It's 4 or 5 a.m. Sun's not quite up. Fog heavy, hanging down all around, and it's dead silent.
Oh, wow.
And then you look out and you see the other ships in your fleet
Boo,
in the distance.
boo.
Not even making those noises.
I'm just doing a foghorn.
You just see in the distance the outlines of the DDG or whatever. Very creepy.
How bad?
Yeah, it's a real unnerving type of feeling because it's so quiet.
Well, that's the thing,
And the fog.
your absence of all the noise pollution of civilization. And it truly is one of the last frontiers on the planet Earth.
Only about 5% of the ocean has been discovered.
Yeah, and there's many parts we can't even access.
Exactly.
Yet nature thrives in those parts, those deep trenches and stuff like that. And there's creatures that have evolved in very strange ways with the phosphorescent,
'Cause there's some ugly ass fish.
Gosh,
down there.
I mean, there's just
Love to watch those Nat Geo programs.
the fact they can survive in those conditions, because I don't think a lot of people realize the pressure and everything, how it just compounds every 10 feet you go down. Cold and just very foreign. And it's certainly somewhere that humans are not meant to dwell.
Unless you're a mermaid.
Unless you're one of the mer people. And if you want more information on the mer people, you go back and catch that other episode of Batshit Crazy about mermaids.
Well, Dylan, I'm so happy I was able to tell you the story. I can tell you're fascinated.
Oh, man, I'm pumped today.
Okay.
I'm glad the computer fucked up that file. Yeah, so we get to redo this.
If you have a suggestion, something you would like us to cover here on Batshit Crazy, you can always email me, batshitpod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram. I'm actually going to post a few pictures on Instagram of the Carroll A. Deering. You can see what the ship looked like before they had to blow it up.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Okay. Thanks, Dylan.
Bye.